So we have online Matt Simpson. Good afternoon, Matt.
Oh, g'day, how are you?
I'm very good. And I suspect you are a little bit better than what you probably were a few weeks ago now too.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a huge relief to get this whole thing done and dusted.
So tell me, what happened?
That's good.
When did it actually start? When did you realise that this was going to be an issue?
Probably started about 2 years ago when the District Council just, that they were indicated that they were going to do a district plan.
Mm-hmm.
And being through Fed Farmers, we sort of had a bit of an insight that they may be up to doing a district plan. So that's kind of when the process all sort of started. And once that process starts, you're sort of locked in and away you go. So
Yeah.
it has to sort of follow a statutory timeline, if you like. Yeah.
Mm. And so it's a thing called the Outstanding Natural Landscape, the ONL, and that was proposed in the district plan.
Yes, it was. Yeah, so they were basically put on most of the altitude areas right through the whole district. They're basically a really big overreach of a land classification, if you like, that happens with district planning.
And so what was the classification in your case? So it's an outstanding natural landscape, but what made it that way?
What made it that way, well, put it this way, it is a natural landscape, so we've got, so the top of our place goes to 5,500 feet or 1,600 metres. So that was, and it's got a ridge line that basically, can be seen from just about anywhere. So the altitude, most of those altitude areas have been defined as an outstanding natural landscape, and
Right.
there's also areas in the district plan that have also identified as outstanding natural features, such as limestone escarpments and
Right.
Also deep gorges and things. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were currently farming those particular areas?
Yes, yeah, we have been, yeah. Well, our place is all freehold, so versus a lot of, other land classification or land tenure in through the eastern Mackenzie District here is leasehold at those sort of altitudes, yeah.
Yep. And so basically it's like high country tussock type stuff, getting into
It is
subalpine?
high country tussock, yes.
Yep.
So we've, just to put it in perspective for your listeners, we've got two fences on either side of the hill, on the other side of those ridges. So we go right over the top of the hill, over into the Hakataramia.
Yep.
And there's two 900-metre fences on either side of the hill, which basically we call snow. And it's a agricultural line, if you like, the altitude line that's, it's been there for, 150, 160 odd years.
Yeah, and there's a whole reason for that, because above that is pretty hard to manage, isn't it?
It is, yes. Well, it different snows and things like that, and obviously the altitude restricts, what can be growing up there and what have you. And below there is considered to be more safe for country for autumn and springs and things like that for production farming, yeah.
So what was your first steps when you realised that this was going to be an issue, and what were the problems for you in terms of what it meant for farming?
Yeah, so for us, well, when we first was sort of unraveled the whole thing, so they did a notified draft plan. I don't know if it was a draft plan, but it was a notified plan of where they intended to have natural landscapes put on our property, and we had the opportunity to work with the planners earlier on, and since those planners have all left which is frustrating. So basically it just looked like a kid had a crayon and sort of drawn a random old line across the property and said, oh no, that's all just going to be outstanding natural landscape, and that stuff there can be general rural zone. So it was really frustrating because it wasn't ground truth. It was just sort of as I say, it felt like a kid had been there with a crayon and
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what were your first steps?
The first steps, so the first steps were to obviously consult with those planners and see if we could get the lines changed back to where we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And on the front side, the Albury side of the hill, we managed to get it right along the 900-metre line, so that was we were okay with that. I mean, it's still got an outstanding natural landscape above that. We still weren't about having any overlay on the property, to be fair. And then on the Hacker side is where the real battle we had, because over there it's just through good stewardship and possibly the fact that we haven't been financial enough to actually have developed a lot of that country over there, that is seen as possibly being more native, and that's kind of where the planners really stepped in, and when they went to identify it themselves to say, oh no, this is actually an outstanding natural landscape, and it's not modified, and there hasn't had enough intensification. So it's kind of like we've been punished we've been penalised for not having developed that country. Yeah.
And so the impact, what's like? Were you looking at like hundreds of hectares that basically you wouldn't be allowed to use anymore, or was it a case of not being able to put buildings or use the land for cropping, or what impact was it?
Yeah, so with an outstanding natural landscape for the eastern Mackenzie, the touch is quite light at the moment. An outstanding natural landscape. So our biggest fear is if an outstanding natural landscape, for example, like the Mackenzie Basin, who have had that big ruling put on them with Plan Change 18, where they went through a lengthy process with the judge and what have you, and they basically can't put up a fence without a consent. Well, they can't put up a fence without a consent. They can't do any buildings or structures. They are absolutely restricted in what they can do, particularly around oversowing, intensification, amenity, scenic routes, those vistas and what have you. It's seriously restricted, but our outstanding natural landscape has a lighter touch. So we are allowed to do fencing without consent, but you only, the amount of earthworks you can do is restricted. And so if you wanted to do any fencing, for example, to make a fence proper, you actually and make a fence line and things like that, so to protect the fence from vegetation and corrosion and rusting and what have you. So and also an outstanding natural landscape can only have in the eastern Mackenzie can only have a very light building footage, if you like. I think it's 50.
So it was really going to be quite restrictive.
Very much so. So you couldn't put up a wall shed.
Wow.
You couldn't put up a house. You couldn't do anything like that. But you've got to get a consent for a house or something of that nature anyway. But and then you got height restrictions too, of course, with the structures.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting seeing just going forward, how we're going to work, if there's still going to be these radio communications and what have you that have been put up in altitude areas, how they get on with those sorts of issues. So also lots of tracking and quarrying. There's restrictions around that, which you can sort of understand. But I mean, a lot of that country's that steep, and
it's not going to be.
It should be that steep, but in our case, where they tried to classify it, it was flat to rolling terrace country. So that's where we were really getting upset about.
So you obviously got in touch with Federated Farmers. And this would not be an isolated issue, I suspect.
No, definitely not. So obviously the whole district have been, had the district plan put on them. So we've been really grateful to Federated Farmers and what they've been able to do with their land and bringing forward, lots of, having those professionals on board that understood it and know the process of mediations and all that sort of thing. Because basically, at the end of the day, we are just trying to be farmers and trying to do that well without having to poke our noses into something else.
And this is an intergenerational family farm that you took over about 12 years ago?
That's right, yes, yeah. So our family have been here for over 100 years, not on this property, but on Mount Nixon, the property next door. So, so my parents, they freeheld the years ago. Obviously, they had to pay money to do that rather than retire any of the land. So, to be challenged within a generation has been most frustrating.
Yeah. And what's the cost of going through a process like this?